How to recreate yourself like a Stoic. Picture this. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the ancient world, sits alone in his tent on the Germanic frontier. Around him, the sounds of war echo through the night. Yet instead of plotting his next military campaign, he's writing to himself about becoming a better human being. These private notes would later become one of history's most influential books. But in that moment he was doing something far more radical than conquering territories. He was recreating himself, one thought at a time. What if I told you that you have the same power? Not the power to rule an empire, but something infinitely more valuable. The power to completely recreate who you are, regardless of your circumstances, your past, or what others think of you. The Stoics discovered this secret over 2,000 years ago, and today I'm going to show you exactly how to apply their methods to transform your life. But here's the twist that most people miss. Stoic self-recreation isn't about becoming emotionless or detached. It's about becoming so internally strong that nothing external can shake your core. It's about developing what the Stoics called an inner citadel that remains unbreachable no matter what storms rage outside. The ancient discovery. Let me take you back to ancient Athens around 300 BC. A man named Zeno of Citium had just lost everything. His merchant ship sank, taking with it his entire fortune and livelihood. Stranded in a foreign city with nothing but the clothes on his back, most people would have seen this as the end. But Zeno later said it was the best thing that ever happened to him because it led him to philosophy and the founding of Stoicism. This wasn't just philosophical wishful thinking. Zeno had discovered something profound about human nature. We have far more control over our lives than we realize, but we're looking in all the wrong places. We spend our energy trying to control outcomes, other people's opinions, market fluctuations, and countless external factors. Meanwhile, the one thing we have complete authority over, our own thoughts and responses, we often neglect entirely. The Stoics developed a systematic approach to self-recreation that was so effective it produced some of history's most resilient and influential figures. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire while maintaining his philosophical principles. Epictetus went from slave to one of the most respected teachers in Rome. Seneca navigated the treacherous waters of Roman politics while amassing great wealth and writing timeless wisdom. What did they know that we've forgotten? They understood that true freedom comes not from changing your circumstances, but from changing your relationship with your circumstances. They discovered that you can literally rewire your brain, reshape your character, and recreate your entire identity using specific mental techniques that modern neuroscience has now validated. The 4 Pillars of Stoic Recreation. The Stoics identified 4 fundamental areas where you can exercise complete control and, through disciplined practice, completely transform who you are. Think of these as the 4 pillars of your inner architecture. When you strengthen these pillars, everything else in your life begins to change. The first pillar, the discipline of perception. Your brain processes over 11 million bits of information every second, but your conscious mind can only handle about 40 bits. This means that at every moment you're choosing what to focus on and how to interpret it. The Stoics realized that this choice is where your power lies. Consider this real example. 2 people get laid off from the same company on the same day. Person A sees it as a catastrophe, proof that they're worthless, and evidence that the world is unfair. Person B sees it as an opportunity to pursue something better, a chance to develop new skills and feedback about which direction to take their career. Same event, completely different interpretations and therefore completely different outcomes. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." But he wasn't just talking about positive thinking. He was describing a systematic method for training your perception. The Stoics practiced what they called the view from above. When faced with any challenge, they would mentally zoom out and see it from a cosmic perspective. That argument with your spouse? In 100 years, no one will remember it. That business failure? In the grand timeline of human history, it's less than a speck of dust. This isn't about minimizing your problems. It's about right-sizing them so you can respond with wisdom rather than react with emotion. But here's where it gets really practical. The Stoics also used a technique called premeditatio malorum, or negative visualization. Every morning they would briefly imagine losing the things they valued most. Not to become pessimistic, but to develop genuine gratitude for what they had and psychological immunity to loss. Modern psychology calls this stress inoculation, and research shows it significantly increases resilience. When you regularly visualize challenges, your brain develops neural pathways for handling them calmly when they actually occur. You're literally rewiring your nervous system to remain stable under pressure. The second pillar, the discipline of action. The Stoics understood that you become what you repeatedly do. But they took this insight much deeper than modern self-help. They realized that every single action, no matter how small, either reinforces your current identity or moves you toward your ideal self. Epictetus taught his students, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. This wasn't just motivational speaking. He was describing a systematic process of identity reconstruction through aligned action. Here's how it works. Your brain has something called the consistency principle. It desperately wants your actions to align with your self-concept. When there's a mismatch, you experience cognitive dissonance, which is psychologically uncomfortable. Most people resolve this by changing their actions to match their self-concept. But the Stoics discovered you can reverse this process and change your self-concept by changing your actions. Let's say you see yourself as someone who lacks discipline. If you perform one disciplined action, your brain has two choices: dismiss the action as an anomaly or begin updating your self-concept. If you consistently perform disciplined actions, your brain will eventually surrender and accept that you are, in fact, a disciplined person. But here's the crucial part the Stoics emphasized. The size of the action matters less than its consistency and intentionality. Marcus Aurelius didn't become disciplined by running marathons. He became disciplined by getting up early every day, even when he didn't want to. Seneca didn't become wise by writing philosophical treatises. He became wise by examining his thoughts and actions every single evening. The Stoics practiced what they called morning reflection and evening review. Each morning they would set intentions for how they wanted to show up in the world. Each evening they would honestly assess how well they had lived up to those intentions. This wasn't self-flagellation when they failed, it was data collection for continuous improvement. The third pillar, the discipline of desire. This might be the most misunderstood aspect of Stoicism. People think Stoics suppress their desires or live lives of grim deprivation. The opposite is true. Stoics learn to desire what they already have and align their wants with what's actually possible and beneficial. Epictetus taught, wealth consists in not having great possessions, but in having few wants. But he wasn't advocating poverty. He was revealing the secret to true satisfaction. When your happiness depends on external acquisition, you become a slave to circumstances. When your happiness comes from appreciating what you already possess, you become truly wealthy. This pillar involves what modern psychology calls hedonic adaptation. Humans quickly return to baseline happiness levels regardless of positive or negative events. Win the lottery and within a year, you'll be about as happy as you were before. Lose your job and within a reasonable time, you'll adapt to your new circumstances. The Stoics understood this principle and used it strategically. Instead of constantly seeking more, they practiced preferred indifference. This means recognizing that while some things are naturally preferable, health over sickness, wealth over poverty, your core well-being doesn't depend on having them. This isn't resignation, it's strategic emotional positioning. When you truly internalize that your happiness isn't dependent on external outcomes, you paradoxically become much more effective at creating positive outcomes because you're not operating from desperation or attachment. The Stoics also practiced voluntary discomfort. Seneca would periodically sleep on the floor, eat simple food, and wear basic clothing. Not as punishment but as training. He was building confidence that he could be happy with less, which made him fearless in his pursuits and generous with his resources. The fourth pillar, the discipline of assent. This is perhaps the most sophisticated Stoic technique and the one that modern neuroscience most strongly validates. The Stoics discovered that between any trigger and your response, there's a crucial moment of choice. In that moment, you decide whether to assent to your initial impression or examine it more carefully. Let's say someone cuts you off in traffic. Your initial impression might be, that person is a selfish jerk who disrespected me. You can immediately assent to this impression and respond with anger, or you can pause and examine it. Maybe they're rushing to the hospital. Maybe they didn't see you. Maybe they're having the worst day of their life. Or maybe they are being selfish, but getting angry about it will only harm you without changing anything. The Stoics trained themselves to catch these initial impressions and examine them before responding. They asked questions like, is this impression necessarily true? Is responding to it helpful? What would the wisest version of myself do in this situation? This isn't about becoming passive or suppressing emotions. It's about becoming responsible instead of reactive. Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and psychologist, captured this beautifully. Between stimulus and response there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. Modern neuroscience shows that this practice literally changes your brain structure. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for executive decision-making, becomes stronger and more active. The amygdala, which triggers fight or flight responses, becomes less reactive. You're not just changing your behavior, you're upgrading your hardware. The daily practice, building your inner citadel. Now that you understand the 4 pillars, let's talk about how to implement them daily. The Stoics were incredibly practical. They didn't just philosophize, they developed specific routines and exercises that gradually built unshakable inner strength. Morning fortress building. The Stoics began each day by mentally preparing for whatever might come. But this wasn't anxious worry, it was strategic preparation. Marcus Aurelius would remind himself each morning that he would encounter difficult people, unexpected setbacks, and various frustrations. Not to become pessimistic, but to set realistic expectations and prepare his mind to respond wisely. Here's a modern adaptation of the Stoic morning practice. Spend 5 minutes imagining your day ahead. Visualize potential challenges and see yourself responding to them with calm wisdom. If you have an important meeting, imagine it going poorly and practice maintaining your equanimity. If you're worried about a relationship conversation, visualize it being more difficult than expected and see yourself listening with compassion and speaking with clarity. This isn't manifestation or positive thinking. It's psychological immunization. You're training your nervous system to remain stable under pressure. When challenges actually arise, your brain will have rehearsed staying calm, making wise responses feel natural and automatic. The Stoics also used morning reflection to clarify their values and intentions. They would ask themselves, what kind of person do I want to be today? How do I want to show up in my relationships? What principles will guide my decisions? This isn't just feel-good motivation, it's programming your reticular activating system to notice opportunities to live according to your values. Afternoon awareness training. Throughout the day, the Stoics practiced what Epictetus called prosoche, or continuous attention. This means maintaining awareness of your thoughts, emotions, and reactions as they arise. The goal isn't to control everything, but to develop the capacity to choose your responses rather than being controlled by automatic reactions. Modern life makes this challenging because we're constantly distracted. But you can adapt Stoic awareness training to contemporary circumstances. Set random reminders on your phone that simply ask, how am I showing up right now? Am I living according to my values? What would the wisest version of myself do in this moment? When you notice yourself becoming reactive, frustrated, or anxious, use the Stoic pause. Take a breath and ask, is this initial impression necessarily accurate? Is my emotional response helpful? What aspects of this situation can I actually control? This isn't about suppressing emotions, it's about making sure your responses are chosen rather than automatic. The Stoics also practiced finding lessons in every experience, especially difficult ones. When something goes wrong, instead of asking, why me? Ask, what can this teach me? How can this make me stronger? What would I advise someone else in this situation? This mental shift transforms you from a victim of circumstances into a student of life. Evening accounting and integration. The Stoics ended each day with honest self-examination. Seneca wrote letters to his friend Lucilius describing this practice. When the lamp is taken away and my wife has fallen silent, I examine the whole day and measure my actions and words. I hide nothing from myself, I omit nothing. But this wasn't harsh self-criticism. It was loving accountability. The Stoics examined their day with the same objective curiosity a scientist might use to study an interesting phenomenon. What worked? What didn't? Where did they act according to their values and where did they fall short? What can they learn and apply tomorrow? Here's a practical framework for evening review. Rate your day in each of the 4 pillars on a scale of 1 to 10. Perception. How well did you maintain helpful perspectives and avoid catastrophizing? Action. How consistently did you act according to your values and long-term interests? Desire. How much did you appreciate what you had versus wanting what you lacked? Assent. How often did you pause and choose your responses rather than reacting automatically? Don't judge the numbers, just observe them. Look for patterns over weeks and months. You might notice that your perception scores are high but your action scores are low, suggesting you understand what to do but struggle with implementation. Or maybe your desire scores fluctuate with external circumstances, indicating an area for focused development. The key insight is that you're not trying to be perfect. You're trying to be intentional. Every evening of honest self-examination strengthens your capacity for wisdom and self-direction. You're literally building new neural pathways that make conscious choice more natural and automatic reaction less likely. Weekly and monthly recalibration. The Stoics also practiced longer-term reflection. Once a week, they would examine broader patterns and themes. Once a month, they would assess their progress toward their larger goals and values. This prevents you from getting lost in daily details and helps maintain focus on what truly matters. During weekly reflection, ask yourself, am I moving toward the person I want to become, or am I just maintaining the status quo? What habits or patterns are serving me and which ones need adjustment? Where am I making progress and where am I stuck? Monthly reflection goes even deeper. Are my daily practices aligned with my deepest values? Am I growing in wisdom and character or just staying busy? What would I need to change to be genuinely proud of how I'm living? This isn't about perfection. It's about direction and intentionality. The transformation process. What to expect. Now let's address what actually happens when you consistently apply these Stoic practices. The transformation isn't immediate or linear, but it is profound and lasting. Understanding the process helps you maintain commitment during challenging periods and recognize progress that might otherwise go unnoticed. Phase 1. Awareness and resistance. The first phase feels like waking up from a dream you didn't know you were having. You begin noticing how automatic your reactions have been, how much mental energy you've been wasting on things outside your control, and how often your emotions have been driving your decisions rather than your values. This awareness can initially feel overwhelming or even discouraging. You might think, how have I been living so unconsciously? Why is it so hard to control my thoughts? This is completely normal. You're not failing, you're finally seeing clearly. During this phase, expect significant resistance from your existing patterns. Your brain has been running on autopilot for years and it doesn't want to change. The neural pathways associated with your current habits are well established and energy efficient. Creating new patterns requires conscious effort and feels unnatural at first. Don't try to transform everything at once. Focus on one pillar at a time, or even one specific practice within a pillar. Maybe start with morning intention setting or evening reflection. The goal is to establish the habit of conscious practice, not to immediately master all Stoic principles. You'll also notice increased awareness of your internal dialogue. You might be surprised by how often you criticize yourself, catastrophize situations, or focus on what's wrong rather than what's working. This awareness is valuable data, not evidence of personal failure. The Stoics would say you're beginning to separate yourself from your thoughts, which is the foundation of all wisdom. Phase 2. Integration and fluctuation, months 2 to 6. During the second phase, Stoic practices begin feeling more natural, but your progress will be inconsistent. Some days you'll handle challenges with remarkable equanimity, and other days you'll revert to old patterns. This fluctuation is part of the process, not a sign that the practices aren't working. Think of it like learning a musical instrument. Initially, every note requires conscious attention. Gradually, some passages become automatic while others still require focus. Eventually, you can play complex pieces while having conversations or thinking about other things. But even professional musicians sometimes hit wrong notes or have off days. During this phase, you'll start noticing that your baseline emotional state is becoming more stable. Setbacks that previously would have devastated you for days now feel manageable within hours. Achievements that once created euphoric highs now generate quiet satisfaction. This isn't becoming emotionless. It's developing emotional resilience and wisdom. You'll also begin experiencing what the Stoics called preferred indifference in practice. You'll still prefer positive outcomes over negative ones, but your peace of mind won't depend on getting them. This creates a paradoxical effect. Because you're less attached to outcomes, you often become more effective at creating positive ones. You take more intelligent risks, communicate more authentically, and make decisions based on principles rather than fears. Relationships during this phase can be interesting. Some people will be drawn to your increased stability and clarity. Others might feel threatened by your decreased reactivity or your refusal to engage in drama and complaint. This is normal. As you change, your relationships will naturally reorganize around your new way of being. Phase 3, Integration and Natural Flow, months 6 to 18. In the third phase, Stoic principles begin operating more automatically. You don't have to consciously remember to examine your initial impressions. Pausing and reflecting becomes a natural response to triggering situations. You don't have to force yourself to focus on what you can control. Your attention naturally gravitates toward your sphere of influence. This doesn't mean you never experience difficult emotions or challenging situations. It means you've developed the capacity to experience them without being overwhelmed or controlled by them. You can feel disappointed without becoming discouraged, frustrated without becoming angry, or uncertain without becoming anxious. You'll notice that your decision-making process has fundamentally changed. Instead of being primarily motivated by avoiding pain or seeking pleasure, you're motivated by alignment with your values and long-term flourishing. This shift often leads to surprising life changes as you realize that some goals you thought were important were actually driven by external pressures or unconscious fears. Your relationship with failure and setbacks will also transform. Instead of seeing them as evidence of your inadequacy, you'll recognize them as information and opportunities for growth. The Stoics called this the discipline of desire in action. You begin genuinely preferring experiences that teach and strengthen you over experiences that are merely pleasant. People often report during this phase that life feels both more serious and more playful. More serious because you're deeply engaged with questions of character and meaning. More playful because you're not taking every outcome so personally. You can pursue ambitious goals while holding them lightly, fully committed but not attached. Phase 4. Mastery and Service, 18 months and beyond. True Stoic mastery isn't about personal invulnerability. It's about becoming so internally stable that you can genuinely serve others without being destabilized by their emotional states or reactions. Marcus Aurelius exemplified this. Despite ruling an empire during plague, war, and political upheaval, he maintained his philosophical principles and served the common good. In this phase, your Stoic practices become invisible because they're so integrated into your way of being. You don't have to think about examining your impressions, acting according to your values, or maintaining equanimity under pressure. These responses have become your new normal. You'll also develop what the Stoics called sympathia, a deep appreciation for the interconnectedness of all things. You begin seeing your own flourishing as inseparable from the flourishing of others. This isn't sentimental altruism, it's practical wisdom. You recognize that your well-being is enhanced when you contribute to the well-being of your community and environment. Common obstacles and Stoic solutions. Every person who attempts to recreate themselves using Stoic principles encounters predictable obstacles. Understanding these challenges and having Stoic strategies for overcoming them significantly increases your chances of success. The perfectionism trap. Many people approach Stoicism with an all-or-nothing mentality. They expect to immediately embody perfect wisdom and equanimity, and when they inevitably fall short, They conclude that either Stoicism doesn't work or they're incapable of change. This perfectionist approach is the opposite of Stoic wisdom. The Stoics were realists about human nature. Epictetus taught his students that progress, not perfection, was the goal. Marcus Aurelius filled his private journal with reminders and encouragements to himself, evidence that even the most accomplished Stoics were continuously working on their character. The solution is to focus on direction rather than destination. Are you generally becoming more conscious, more values-driven, and more emotionally resilient? Are you handling challenges slightly better this month than last month? These are the metrics that matter, not whether you respond perfectly to every situation. The emotional suppression misconception. Another common obstacle is the mistaken belief that Stoicism requires suppressing or eliminating emotions. This misunderstanding leads people to become rigid and disconnected, which is the opposite of Stoic flourishing. The Stoics distinguished between initial emotions, which are natural and largely involuntary, and sustained emotional states, which involve ongoing mental assent to particular interpretations. You don't choose to feel initial anger when someone treats you unfairly, but you do choose whether to nurture that anger into lasting resentment or examine it for useful information and then let it go. True Stoic practice actually increases emotional intelligence because you become more aware of your feelings and more skilled at responding to them wisely. You learn to honor your emotions as information while not being controlled by them as commands. The social pressure challenge? As you become more Stoic, you might find yourself out of sync with cultural norms that emphasize external validation, constant stimulation, and emotional reactivity. Friends and family might not understand why you're less interested in gossiping, complaining, or seeking revenge when wronged. This social pressure can be particularly intense because humans are fundamentally social creatures. We're wired to seek approval and avoid rejection from our groups. The Stoics understood this challenge and developed strategies for maintaining their principles while remaining connected to others. The key is to practice what Epictetus called reserve clause. You engage fully with social situations while internally maintaining your commitment to wisdom and virtue. You can listen compassionately to friends' complaints without joining in the negativity. You can pursue professional success without compromising your integrity. You can enjoy pleasures without becoming dependent on them. The motivation and consistency challenge. Perhaps the biggest obstacle is maintaining consistent practice over time, especially when progress feels slow or when life becomes particularly demanding. The initial enthusiasm for change naturally fades, and old patterns reassert themselves. The Stoics addressed this by building practice into their daily routines and focusing on intrinsic rather than extrinsic motivation. They didn't practice philosophy to impress others or achieve specific outcomes. They practiced because becoming wise and virtuous was inherently worthwhile. Creating accountability systems also helps. This might involve finding others who are interested in Stoic practice, keeping a daily journal of your reflections, or working with a mentor or coach who understands these principles. The specific method matters less than having some external support for your internal work. The ripple effect, how your transformation affects others. One of the most surprising aspects of Stoic self-recreation is how profoundly it affects your relationships and environment. As you develop greater emotional stability, clearer values, and more intentional responses, the people around you begin responding differently to you, often in ways that surprise both you and them. Modeling emotional regulation. When you stop reacting emotionally to provocative situations, others often follow your lead without conscious intention. Your calm presence gives them permission to pause and think rather than immediately react. This is especially powerful in family dynamics where emotional reactivity can create destructive cycles that last for generations. Children are particularly sensitive to this modeling. When parents develop Stoic emotional regulation, their children naturally begin adopting similar patterns. Instead of learning that emotions are overwhelming forces that must be expressed immediately, they learn that feelings are information that can be examined and responded to thoughtfully. Professional relationships also transform. Colleagues who previously might have tried to manipulate you through emotional pressure find that strategy ineffective. Instead, they begin engaging with you more directly and honestly. Your consistent focus on what you can control rather than what you can't makes you a more effective collaborator and leader. Creating space for others' growth. When you stop trying to control other people's choices and outcomes, you paradoxically create more space for them to make positive changes. Your decreased reactivity to their behavior removes one source of external pressure, allowing their intrinsic motivation for growth to emerge more naturally. This is particularly evident in intimate relationships. When you stop making your happiness dependent on your partner's mood or behavior, they often feel more freedom to be authentic and less pressure to manage your emotional state. Many people report that their relationships actually become more intimate and connected as they become more stoic, not less. The same principle applies to parenting. When you focus on modeling the behavior and values you want to see rather than constantly correcting and controlling, children often begin naturally adopting those qualities. Your calm confidence in their ability to learn and grow becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Contributing to community resilience. Stoic individuals often become stabilizing forces in their communities during times of crisis or uncertainty. Because their well-being isn't dependent on external circumstances, they can think clearly and act helpfully when others might be overwhelmed by anxiety or panic. This contribution doesn't require any special role or position. Simply maintaining your principles under pressure and continuing to focus on what you can control makes you a resource for others who might be struggling. Your example demonstrates that it's possible to remain stable and effective even during difficult times. Living the Stoic life in the modern world. The ancient world that produced Stoicism was obviously different from our contemporary reality, but the core human challenges remain remarkably consistent. We still struggle with disappointment, loss, difficult relationships, and uncertainty about the future. We still have to decide how to spend our time, what values to prioritize, and how to respond when life doesn't go according to plan. Technology and attention. Modern technology creates unique challenges for Stoic practice, particularly around attention and emotional regulation. Social media platforms are specifically designed to trigger emotional reactions and capture your attention, often in ways that conflict with Stoic principles of focusing on what you can control. The Stoic approach isn't necessarily to avoid all technology, but to use it consciously and in alignment with your values. This might mean setting specific times for checking social media rather than allowing it to interrupt your day randomly. It might mean curating your feeds to include content that inspires wisdom and growth rather than content that generates outrage or envy. The key is recognizing that your attention is your most precious resource. Every moment you spend focused on celebrity gossip, political anger, or social comparison is a moment not spent developing wisdom, serving others, or appreciating what you have. The Stoics would see this as a profound waste of human potential. Career and financial decisions. Stoicism offers a unique perspective on professional and financial success. Rather than pursuing money or status as ends in themselves, you evaluate opportunities based on whether they align with your values and allow you to develop and express your character. This doesn't mean avoiding ambition or financial responsibility. Marcus Aurelius was incredibly successful by conventional measures, and Seneca was one of the wealthiest men in Rome. But they held their external success lightly, recognizing that their true worth came from their character rather than their achievements. In practice, this might mean choosing a career that offers opportunities for growth and service even if it pays less than alternatives. It might mean starting a business based on solving genuine problems rather than just maximizing profit. It might mean investing in experiences and relationships rather than accumulating possessions. Relationships and community. Perhaps nowhere is Stoic wisdom more relevant than in relationships. The principles of focusing on what you can control, examining your initial impressions, and responding with virtue rather than emotion can transform how you connect with others. In romantic relationships, this means taking responsibility for your own emotional state rather than making your partner responsible for your happiness. It means communicating your needs clearly while accepting that your partner has the right to their own choices and responses. It means choosing love as an action rather than just a feeling. In friendships, Stoic principles help you be genuinely supportive without becoming codependent. You can care deeply about friends' well-being while recognizing that their choices and consequences are ultimately their own. You can offer wisdom and assistance while respecting their autonomy. Even in difficult relationships, Stoic practice provides tools for maintaining your integrity and peace of mind. You can interact with challenging people without being controlled by their behavior. You can set healthy boundaries without hostility. You can choose forgiveness not because others deserve it, but because resentment harms you more than them. Your journey begins now. Everything I've shared with you represents over 2,000 years of tested wisdom about human flourishing and character development. But knowledge without application is merely entertainment. The question now is whether you're ready to begin the patient, rewarding work of recreating yourself according to Stoic principles. Start small and start today. Choose one of the 4 pillars that resonates most strongly with you right now. Maybe it's the discipline of perception, learning to examine your initial interpretations before accepting them as truth. Maybe it's the discipline of action, beginning to align your daily choices with your deepest values. Maybe it's the discipline of desire, practicing gratitude for what you have rather than constantly seeking more. Or maybe it's the discipline of assent, creating space between triggers and responses so you can choose wisdom over reaction. Whatever you choose, commit to practicing it consistently for at least 1 month. Don't worry about perfection or dramatic transformation. Focus on building the habit of conscious, intentional living. Keep a simple journal noting your experiments, observations, and insights. Treat yourself as both scientist and subject in the fascinating project of human development. Remember that this work is inherently worthwhile regardless of external outcomes. You're not practicing Stoicism to impress others, achieve specific goals, or even solve particular problems, though all of these may happen. You're practicing because developing wisdom, courage, justice, and self-discipline makes you more fully human and allows you to contribute more meaningfully to the world. The path isn't always easy, but it is always available. Unlike so many aspects of life that depend on circumstances, luck, or other people's cooperation, your character development depends only on your own choices and commitment. No one can prevent you from becoming wiser, more virtuous, or more resilient. No external circumstance can stop you from living according to your values or choosing thoughtful responses over automatic reactions. The invitation. The Stoics believe that every human being has the potential for wisdom and flourishing, regardless of their starting point or circumstances. Epictetus was born a slave and became one of history's most influential teachers. Marcus Aurelius inherited immense power and used it to serve others. Seneca navigated wealth and politics while maintaining his philosophical principles. Their examples prove that Stoic transformation is possible for anyone willing to do the work. The only question is whether you're ready to begin. Will you continue living reactively, controlled by circumstances and emotions? Or will you take responsibility for recreating yourself according to timeless principles of wisdom and character? The choice, as always, is entirely yours. But remember, every day you postpone beginning is a day of potential growth and peace that you'll never recover. The Stoics would say that the present moment is the only time you can actually influence your life. Yesterday is gone, tomorrow is uncertain, but right now, in this moment, you have the power to choose who you want to become. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I have to go to work, as a human being. What do I have to complain of, if I'm going to do what I was born for, the things I was brought into the world to do?" This is your work as a human being, to develop wisdom, to live virtuously, and to contribute to the flourishing of yourself and others. Everything else is secondary. The Stoics discovered this truth over 2 millennia ago, and it remains as relevant today as it was then. The only question is whether you're ready to embrace it. Your transformation begins with your next choice. Choose wisely.